Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new interview from MinnMax. MinnMax is a place about games, friends, getting better. My name is Ben Hansen. Thank you for being here. We're glad you found us. Today's interview is with Jim Warnell, who is a graphic designer who worked at Nintendo for many, many years. If you know games, you know his work. He has worked on the logo for Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Metroid Prime, Animal Crossing, Advance Wars, and a ton more when it comes to designing the manuals, all that fun stuff. So peak childhood nostalgia, Jim worked on the design for those games, the graphic design specifically. I found Jim from an interview on an excellent podcast called Kiwi Talks with a Z at the end. So if you want to learn more about his career, you can always check out that podcast. It's a great one overall. And because of MinnMax's game champion tier, somebody was the champion of Wind Waker, ended up winning the poll. That was Otsigo12 from the MinnMax community. And I remembered, oh, this person, Jim here, they worked on the Wind Waker logo. So maybe we can line something up there. And then this interview expanded even further because I thought, I can only ask so many questions about graphic design. We need an expert. So who better to call in than Corey Schmitz, the designer who has worked on a ton of designs from the game industry. If you know the logo for Control, Stray, Oculus, the Video Game History Foundation, our friends over there like Kelsey, Valorant, 8-Bit Do, Analog, the PlayStation Studios logo, Team Asobi, Ghost of Tsushima, Shadow of the Colossus, the remake, Days Gone, Res Infinite. Corey has done a ton of work in the game industry. If you enjoy content like this, you can help support it by subscribing to MinnMax's YouTube channel, help spread the word about what we're doing here, help support independent games media, and you can help support it even more directly by going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. If you support us at the $5 tier, you unlock the podcast version of all of our interviews and a ton more, including deepest dives on a bunch of Nintendo games, which are huge community game clubs. Any help spreading the word about MinnMax is appreciated. But without further ado, here's Corey and Jim. Jim and Corey, welcome to MinnMax, guys.
Thank you. Good to be here.
For having us.
Absolutely. It's exciting to have both of you here together. It's an odd pairing, but I'm glad it all naturally evolved this way, where originally it's like, oh, let's just talk about Wind Waker, and then, oh, Jim would be a good contact for that. And then we reached out to Jeff Wiggins, who did the design for MinnMax overall, and he's like, oh, you should get Corey into this. And so now it's just kind of evolved into a larger design conversation. So I'm glad to connect you dots. I assume you two have never met each other before?
No. This is very cool.
Yeah. Is it too simplistic to say, oh, Jim, you're Nintendo graphic designer, and Corey, you're PlayStation graphic designer. Look at you talking now. That's too much, right?
Yeah, it's been a long time. 15, 16 years since my Nintendo days. So
yeah. How often do people talk to you about some of those old Nintendo logos?
You know what? I heard nothing about my Nintendo days until like a couple of years ago, when a couple of Twitter users like found my name in an F-Zero game by accident, and from there it's just snowballed.
Is that because you were doing VO for that F-Zero game?
Yeah, I did VO for F-Zero. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
Which one was that again?
I was the announcer, Master Zero.
There we go.
F-Zero X for the N64.
That's so awesome.
So you did all sorts of like widely different things, I guess, at Nintendo?
Yeah, I mean, I was a consumer service rep. I was a gameplay counselor. I was a game tester. I was an associate producer, and then finally moved into graphic design, and I've been a graphic designer ever since.
How did you get to that point where you were doing, like, what was the progression to get to logo design after those avenues? Gosh,
it was complete accident. I was associate producer for all the first party games that were coming out of Nintendo Japan, and I was overworked. It was me and really nobody else for first party stuff, and we had. I was in the middle of Ocarina of Time, and I was doing a couple smaller projects on the side, Shadowgate Classic and a couple other ones. I can't remember the names, but we were. I needed help with the Shadowgate Classic. I believe it was the manual packaging, the layout for all that stuff, and our design department, our in-house design department, they were overworked, they were understaffed, and so I said, "Is there anything I can do to help out?" And they said, "Yeah, if you want to do some simple instruction manual layouts, that'll help us speed the process." And I did it. I did a manual layout in Quark Express at the time, and I absolutely loved it. I thought, this is fun. I could see myself doing this long term. And so, one game led to another and led to another, and finally the VP of design, Don James, called me up and said, "Do you want to come work for me?" And I said yes, because it was a perfect time. Things were crazy in first party development hell, and it just seemed like an easy transition. And I moved up there, and I was a graphic designer ever since. That was November '98. So
98. And then you steered towards logo design after that, or was that?
Yeah, well, I started just doing some really small stuff, manual design, package design, layout, game pack labels, stuff like that. And my first logo design, I can't remember which one it was. It was either Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, or it was Excite Bike 64. I can't remember which one came first, but from there it just kind of rolled into other games. I did Metroid Prime, Mario and Donkey Kong, Mario Superstar Baseball, Golden Sun, Advance Wars, Animal Crossing, just a bunch.
It's ridiculous.
So,
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's all fun.
Corey,
basically my whole age 12 to 18, my whole life is in your hands, basically.
Yeah.
Hey, Corey, as a designer, when you look at Jim's work, what stands out to you? I know it's
hard to say because, like I just said, these are so ingrained in my memory that I don't even think I could take any kind of objective stance to anything. They're all just classics. They're all it's just I've seen them so many times. I just can't even separate the design from the memories, I guess. But I guess I was kind of wondering about designing back then versus now too. Was that Photoshop 4 time period, or freehand and stuff like that?
There was a lot of freehand. Freehand and PageMaker were big back then.
Because I was just wondering about there's a lot of effects on the logos, and just from a technical standpoint, how you accomplished that then versus now, and what the difference is, because that was kind of at the cusp of, I guess, World Wide Web and all these tools we have, and even sourcing fonts and stuff. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, we did a lot of pencil sketch, a lot of physical thumbnails, and would bring it into, it was pre-Creative Suite. So, it might have been Illustrator 7, Illustrator 8, one of those. But I did a lot of Illustrator, Photoshop combined. I would, create stuff in Illustrator, bring it into Photoshop, and try to do my effects from there. So.
That's interesting. That's kind of similar. I do a lot of similar stuff where it's you're kind of making the silhouette and the shape in Illustrator, and then heightening it a bit in Photoshop. But that's cool. Yeah.
It's weird, Jim. Is it odd to have somebody just call all your work iconic? Do you see it as iconic at this point? Because as Corey said, this is just our childhood that we're looking at here.
No. It's okay. And anybody says that they don't think about that, if somebody comes up to Corey and says your work is iconic, I love what you've done. I grew up with it in my childhood. That is cool. It's always going to be cool. It'll never stop being cool. It's cool to be remembered for stuff like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Corey, you just got to give it time. 20 years from now, people look back on Ghost of Tsushima's logo and be like, well, that's iconic. That's my childhood, right?
That'd be cool. Yeah. I don't know. I hope so.
Well, it's going to be such a weird thing too, to attach your skills and therefore your resume to these games where you don't really know what the legacy is going to be. Even something, Corey, like Valorant, as that continued to climb, it's okay, well, now I guess my skills are climbing along with it. Or something like Animal Crossing, Jim, when you design that logo for the American version of Animal Crossing, and now it's just a cultural juggernaut, and now it's like, oh, I guess by process of elimination or being next to it, therefore I am now a cultural juggernaut. It's got to be a weird thing to attach it to somebody else's train, you know?
Yeah, I had no idea that, you know, Animal Crossing was going to be as big as it was. I thought it was just a silly little nothing game that, you know, seriously, I mean, back in 2002, 2003, you know, when that game came out, I had no idea. You know, I didn't.
Yeah, they didn't even put out the N64 one in the US. So.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Do you remember those early conversations for Animal Crossing? Like, did you get to play the 64 DD version or anything, or what were you originally told?
No. Back then projects just came in and they were assigned to different designers, and it just kind of fell in my lap. I think another designer was working on the manual packaging, but she didn't have time to do the logo, and the logo fell into my lap. And so, it was just pure happenstance.
Do you, Corey, do you have experience as well of like making kind of the English logo and comparing and contrasting it to the Japanese version? Because that's a lot of what you're doing here, Jim, right? Is you're looking at the Japanese logo and then making a new version of it, kind of remixing it, or trying to start anew when needed? Or how would you explain that, Jim?
Oh, boy. I'll be honest. I can't remember which version came out first. It was a Japanese version or the US. But I remember just discussions with Japan at the time, where they gave me direction how they wanted the logo to look, what they felt the direction of the game was going to be, and then I just kind of went from there. You're asking me about stuff that happened over 20 years ago, so sometimes I have difficulty remembering what happened 20 minutes ago.
Yeah,
I was wondering like how you balanced like how much of it was kind of adapting a Japanese logo to English versus like bringing your own spin to it, and then did they ever make a Japanese version of your English logo? Like, does it work both ways, or was it kind of?
Well, I can remember what Metroid Prime came out in the U.S. first.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
And Japan after it. So yeah, it back then it didn't happen that often, but it did happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Corey, do you have a lot of experience with that, of kind of the bouncing back and forth?
Not really. I feel like I've seen a lot of times the logo I make gets adapted into different languages, and that's always really cool. Like I love to see the Japanese localized version of something I do, or like the Arabic ones look really cool too.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I've ever experienced making an English version of a Japanese logo before. But it sounds like an interesting challenge. It's just the letter forms are so different, but you kind of have to capture that same energy. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, could we dive into the Wind Waker logo in particular? That was your first Zelda game that you did, because you didn't do Majora's? Or?
No. Well, it was the first. I think it was the first Zelda logo. I had done some promotional stuff before. I believe there was an Ocarina / Majora's Mask kind of combo.
Yes.
For the GameCube. I did that. But Wind Waker was probably the first. They did manual and packaging for that one as well.
I love that. So what do you remember from the earliest days of Wind Waker? I mean, it's such a bold game artistically for the game itself. How does that impact your job then?
I don't know. I liked Wind Waker. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
It gets a knock, I guess, for being such a departure from the other games in the series, but I liked it.
I think history has proven that everybody who didn't like it was actually just incorrect.
I feel like that's been very retro, revisions, I guess, like in history. Like now it's very highly regarded, but I remember, at the time it was like this, like the Zelda joke or whatever,
right?
Cell shaded. Yeah, I was like, oh my god, this looks so good.
I thought it was great. I love that game. Diving into the history of the Wind Waker logo, gosh, from a certain standpoint, designing logos for U.S. games based on the Japanese version can be very easy because, you know, the word mark's already done. They don't want you to touch that. Mm-hmm. There's certain elements of the logo that they really want to focus on. So like with Wind Waker, I think I tweaked the ship a little bit, added the subtitle, and that was probably the extent of my involvement with the logo.
Right.
The packaging was completely us. I mean, it was just totally different from the Japanese version.
Yeah.
I know that working on that one, a lot of the powers that be at NOA, since the Zelda NES game was gold, the Ocarina of Time game was gold. I think there was another one that was gold too, but they wanted the packaging for the GameCube version to kind of mimic that. So that's where we came with the hologram kind of gold foil packaging.
Yeah. What about just the Zelda logo itself? I'm trying to dive back through. Was it Link to the Past where that kind of locked in as the overall, just the way that, and the font for Zelda? Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, well, so Link to the Past would have been a 2D logo. Ocarina of Time might have been the first like 3D beveled logo.
And was the idea then to mirror the game going to 3D? Let's actually put the bevel on it? That's interesting. I mean, since you're working on the packaging and stuff for Ocarina of Time, I mean, did you talk to the designers who were working on the logo for Ocarina of Time? No. Okay, so Ocarina of Time, I was, it's kind of a weird dichotomy. I was a AP for Ocarina of Time as I was transitioning into design. So I worked on the debug, marketing, legal, all the nuts and bolts aspect of the game. And then when I transitioned into design, I did the layout, the manual packaging, you know, the design work for that as well. So the logo was done in Japan. It was done by the developers, designers over there. So it really didn't have anything to do with the Ocarina of Time logo. Gotcha. Corey, when you look at the Zelda logo, are you able to detach yourself from nostalgia at all and think about it critically about just the old big red Z and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're like, these kind of old logos that are, or not old, sorry, like these legacy logos that are kind of in the zeitgeist a bit. You don't really focus on like the individual elements until you really look closely, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is like, you're kind of looking at it like holistically, like in your memory, but then it's interesting, like taking a closer look at it and really staring at it. Like it's interesting because with like, I think the first time I played Wind Waker was at like the Target GameCube kiosk, you know, or at GameStop, I can't remember. But then I always remembered like the smoke twirl effect, and I thought that was like blew my mind. And I like to see that that's like in like the waves here and like kind of at the end of the boat. Like I never really thought about that before, but it's cool. It's like it has some of the art style in there. It has some of like the memorable elements, and it just feels very Zelda.
Yeah, Jim, when you look back on your the highlights of your time at Nintendo and you look at these logos, do you see yourself in them, or are you just reminded of 300 meetings and the committee debates and all that stuff going into these?
I don't think about the meetings or the hours and hours and hours spent working on this stuff. I just look at the finished product and I think, I worked on Metroid Prime and there were 53 versions of the logo from start to finish. I just look at the finished product and think, I got to work on that, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Was that the most difficult one, would you say, or was there a certain one that was like a extra challenging?
Prime? I wouldn't say it was difficult, but Prime, there were many more eyes, many more hands in the kitchen with that one. So, that one had to be right. 53 versions, that's fine. As long as the last one is the best one, that's all that matters.
Right.
Exactly.
Did your time at Nintendo overlap with Reggie much in the design department? Because he came in 2004, 2003?
I worked with Reggie a little bit. I want to say he came in even before that. I did overlap with Reggie a little bit. He started VP of sales. I believe he took over for Peter Main, who had retired. So I worked with him a little bit, but not much.
Okay. Was he, do you remember anything about his style? Was he very hands-on, coming from a marketing background with the logos in particular, or graphic design, or that was...
No, he wasn't. He wasn't very hands-on with design. He might have been with my boss at the time, sure. But as a designer, I never, saw any of that stuff.
Yeah. I have a super deep cut question for you. On your site, where you run down different logos, there was a logo for something, and I had no memory of this, but the Nintendo Fusion Tour, where Nintendo toured around with the GameCube. And then they had like My Chemical Romance and a bunch of bands from like the early 2000s playing at the
that was such an early 2000s thing that brands did, wasn't it? Like, do you remember seeing like all those buses, like for different brands? Yeah. Yeah. They give you like a CD sampler or something, right?
Right. Yeah. Some of the bands I listen to now, I got introduced because of the Fusion Tour, like Amberlin and Letterkills and My Chemical Romance and stuff. So yeah, it was cool. It was this weird, like, music video game promotional tour that they did in like early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that must be kind of fun. Like, now I get to be kind of, a designer for a band in a way, or a concert. It's a different skill set.
It's those little things that, designing for video games is fun, but every once in a while you get to do like, I did CD art for a Circuit City promotional sampler. So it's fun. It's fun. It's definitely fun.
Yeah. Corey, do you have any other thoughts on designs, questions? Tap into your mind a little bit here.
I don't know. It's just really cool to see all this stuff in one place. I noticed you did some like sports logos too. Is that how? I was wondering, like, how do you approach that in a totally different way than the game logos? Like,
yeah, because I'm a
such a different. Geek. Okay, yeah,
yeah, I'm a big sports geek, and I've been playing fantasy football for 30 years. So so anytime we get a chance to design a sports logo, I'm all over it. I think it was Mario Superstar Baseball. It was
to fuse those two things.
Yeah.
And I saw you're from Seattle too. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm from. So we're pretty close. And you went to.
Where are you now?
Saw you. I'm in Queens right now, but I graduated from Cornish in 2010. So you were at Art Institute until 2008. So we were very
close. Just
down
the street. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah, very cool.
Something in the area, I guess. Everybody becomes legendary designers, I guess. It's just, it's got to happen.
It's the salmon.
That's right. Jim, what's like the most surprised or flattering place you've ever seen your work? Or just, seen it out in the wild, anything like that? Have you had one key moment where it really hit you, the impact of some of these designs?
I think the weirdest thing, and probably the most flattering, is just somebody reaching out via Twitter, who discovered that I was the voice for F-Zero X.
That one does it for you, the voice.
And then they've asked me to, so because of that, I've gotten to do a few voiceover projects for just small little like Twitter, YouTube, users with the Master Zero voice, and so it's weird, but it's fun,
Yeah, you got to get on Cameo with that. It's a very niche audience, but you can charge whatever you want, because if they're in, they're in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, who did the You've Got Boost Power voice? Who was that?
That's me. Yeah,
that's you.
Me. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Now,
wow.
We couldn't possibly ask you to do it here, Jim. That would be very unprofessional.
No, I won't. It'll upset the girlfriend.
Oh, I see. Okay, so get a lot of that. Let's see.
No. Wait. Gosh, what was it? Honest Trailers. The YouTube channel. Yeah, they did an Honest Game trailer for Star Fox 64, which is a game that I worked on.
Yeah.
and that's when I thought, okay, I made it.
That's it, man. That's absolutely it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Do you is it tough? I know Nintendo's, how do you say it, a tight company. Is it tough to like promote your design work now by calling back to these Nintendo logos and trying to find that balance of like what you can put on your site, maybe what you can't, what you can claim credit for, what you can't?
It's been 16 years, and nobody said boo about any of the logos that I put on my portfolio.
Awesome.
You know, I can honestly say I worked on them. So yeah, if they have a problem with it, they can let me know, and I'll take them down.
Great. Or just don't. You know, on behalf of history, it's fine. Okay.
The statute of limitations.
That's right. We should ask, because it's relevant this year, and maybe will be relevant for the next couple of years. Advance Wars, they're doing that the reboot camp, the remake that's coming out. Although it's been delayed. Did you know that they're re-releasing Advance Wars?
No.
That is so fascinating. No. What do you remember about designing that one? Just to dive into this one here.
Let's see. I did Advance Wars and Black Hole Rising, so 1 and 2. What do I remember? I remember that wrench. Yep. And I remember I had the worst time trying to bevel it.
So did you have to do that manually, or was that using effects or the beveling?
I did it manually, probably in Illustrator, because Photoshop beveling effects at the time were not that great.
Okay, I see.
So yeah,
that seems tough.
Yeah, I think I rough beveled it in Photoshop, brought it into Illustrator, cleaned it up, and then brought it back into Photoshop.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do
you ever want to take a more old school approach, Corey? Is there some magic in the elders' tools?
I like to use some old school approaches every once in a while. Like I do a fair amount of drawing things, scanning it in, and then tracing it, stuff like that, just to keep some cool textures around, not always have it be so crisp, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, back then, the beveling effects, the image tracing that exists in Illustrator, that didn't exist back then. So I thought, if you can't do it the old school way now, then what are you learning?
Yeah. This is too simplistic of a question for you both, and I apologize for my ignorance. And I'm sure you get all the time. What makes a good logo? For people who have designed so many iconic gaming logos at this point, like Jim, do you have thoughts on this?
That is a question I cannot answer. I've worked on logos that I thought were going to be just absolute garbage, for lack of a better word, and they've turned out to be, iconic, for lack of a better word. So it's a purely subjective question. I think. I don't know. What do you think, Corey?
I think it's like what makes a good logo is one thing, but what makes a good game logo is more specific, because I almost think of game logos as almost like illustrations to a point, because you're kind of trying to communicate what the game is in a very small form. So when I make a game logo, I like to kind of represent the game as best I can in such a simple little thing like a logo. That's the challenge. And, you already have all this key art and in-game art, and how do you make it all kind of gel? That's what makes it good. If you see a logo on a key art at the end of a trailer and you don't go, oh, that looks out of place, then I think it's doing something right.
Yeah. And you look at the Animal Crossing logo, and it could not fit that bill more. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even, to some extent, you don't notice it as it being distinctive from anything, because it fits in so well. So I think that's a good, I think that's a really good, result.
Yeah, for sure. Jim, if people want to reach out to you, congratulate you on an amazing career, or maybe do people reach out and ask for new designs? Are you interested in doing more freelance stuff, or where are you at these days?
Always interested in new stuff. I mean, yeah, people who want to reach out, I'm on Twitter, JimBob_Cratchit. I've got my website portfolio. I mean, I'm always open to dialoguing and discussing and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, with all these like spiritual successors to Nintendo games that they won't make themselves, get the original guy to do the logo for it.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah,
That'd be sweet. There's links below for all this fun stuff. Corey, if people are interested in seeing more of your work, contacting you, all that fun stuff, where should they go?
Just Corey Schmitz on any platform, basically. So my website is CoreySchmitz.com, and then Corey Schmitz on Twitter. No E in Corey.
There we go. You got it. Sweet. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching or listening to this interview from MinnMax. There are many more like it. Not exactly like it, but you get the overall flavor. So you can check out the playlist there. Subscribe to MinnMax's YouTube channel. Help spread the word. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, folks. Goodbye. If you thought, hey, this video wasn't bad, well, there's a whole lot more like it on MinnMax's YouTube channel. Please help us out by subscribing to our channel and checking out the MinnMax Show podcast, also available on your favorite podcast app, the best, most thorough discussion about games on the internet with the deepest dive, our monthly community trivia show with prizes called Trivia Tower, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for your support, everybody. All you gotta do is click that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it.